Hello everybody. In today's video, I'm going to talk about why the Apple 5K Intel iMac is probably the last best Intel computer that Apple is offering that you could still buy today. I have been using the Apple Intel iMac, the 5K 2020. Let me show you right here. This has been my main editing system for the past 2 years, and I purchased it when Apple actually announced the 2020 iMac, all the versions. I ended up getting the i7, and I got it because of a lot of the functionality this computer has. So in today's episode, we're going to talk about the price, as the price has not gone down in 2 years because of a lot of the strengths this computer has. We're also going to talk about functionality 2 years later, and why, even though I have an M1 MacBook Air, which is my travel computer, the 5K Intel 2020 5K iMac is my main computer that I use for everything, including editing projects with my Red Komodo, Sony FX30, all of my Canon, my R6, R7. It handles all that footage flawlessly. We'll talk about more. We'll talk more about that after this. So if you are new here, my name is Jeff Fagan. I'm a filmmaker, director of photography, content creator. I do a lot of different things in video, which is why not only do I have a bunch of different cameras for the types of gigs that I'm doing, I also have a few different computers for what I'm editing. Mainly the 5K Intel iMac is my biggest what I use the most, which I'll pull up right here on Amazon. So the 5K Intel iMac, I had got the i7 base model. Now, I did not get the cheapest model, as I'll show you right here. The cheapest model available is this iCore 5 3.1 gigahertz. It's still a 5K 27-inch iMac, but it's not the same specs. You don't have the same graphics card, anything like that. So today, we're specifically talking about the base model iCore 7 model that's here at $2199. It comes with 512 gigabytes of internal storage, but the big thing, besides it having an iCore 7, is it has, on the base model, an AMD Radeon Pro 550 XT graphics, which is an 8 gigabyte graphics card. So this desktop computer does everything I need to do for editing. But there's another reason that I'm still not on the M1, M2 computers as my main desktop, and that has to do with this computer specifically being Intel. For some of my work and also some of my leisure activities like gaming, I still need to have a Windows computer. Now, I didn't want to have to go and get a Windows desktop in addition to getting a Mac computer desktop, because one of the things I've noticed, and I've spoke about this in my MacBook Air reviews, is that I traditionally used all of my MacBook Pros over the past 12 years as mostly desktops, and then brought them with me traveling and whatnot. But even when I was traveling, never really used them to their fullest ability while I was traveling. I only used them to their best ability while I was home. So this round, I ended up getting, again, the 5K iMac 2020. Now, besides all the specs that and reasons why I mentioned I got this computer, there's another hidden spec that most Mac computers don't let you do, and it's the fact that this last 5K iMac is the only computer currently being sold by Apple that lets you custom upgrade your own RAM. So as you see, this computer comes with 8 gigabytes of RAM. If you've seen my MacBook Air videos, I've been talking about how those computers can use 8 gigabytes of RAM and still be really efficient. However, with these Intel computers, 8 gigabytes of RAM, as a lot of you know, is just not enough. Now, because you can use or upgrade this RAM, go with the 8 gigabytes, because you can go on Amazon here and you can get, right now I have, I bought two 32 gigabyte sticks, and then there's 4 slots in total, so you can get up to 128 gigs of RAM. So I ended up leaving the original 8 in there and then adding the 2 32 gig sticks. So in total, I have about 72 gigs of RAM, which runs everything I need to from this computer. Now, like I said, I use this computer for editing. I primarily use DaVinci Resolve and Premiere Pro. Premiere Pro works amazing on this computer. Definitely works a lot better than on my M1 MacBook Air, which is why on the Air I only use DaVinci, and it's part of the reason I'm also using mostly DaVinci, so I can go from computer to computer, keep the same projects, and both of them work really well. So other than upgrading the RAM in this computer, the only other thing I did is I also am using an external SSD, one that I built. But those are the only two things that I had to do after I purchased this computer. And the external SSD I also use on my MacBook Air and edit off of on my MacBook Air, which is part of the reason that computer for traveling, editing on the go is so quick. But when I'm home, it's nice to be able to come back here and I've got a nice display. I can edit all of my videos. Even though the Komodo does shoot in 6K, I have a nice 5K display here where I can see everything in higher resolution than on a 4K display. Also, the colors are very accurate. It's just very simple. And then even when I move this computer from location to location, it's one display that has everything built into it. Now, I'm interested to see where Apple goes with the Pro versions of their iMac, as right now, the only iMacs we have are really the same configurations as the MacBook Air. They're not really super powerful. They haven't come out with a replacement yet for the 5K iMac. And what was cool when I got this 5K iMac back in 2020 at this point was the fact that it was basically an iMac Pro under the guise of a 5K iMac. So for $2,200, you got most of the processing power that you would get in a Mac Pro. And when I was working at Grant Cardone, all of our iMacs were iMac Pros. And it was funny that on a computer that was much more expensive, I was getting very similar performance as I'm getting on this 2200 iMac, 5K iMac. Now, I think because of how well these computers were designed, there was also other things, like for instance, let me take this off right here. So when Apple came out with this last 2025K iMac, they added things in like H.265 encoders and whatnot that weren't in their older Intel computers. So when you're messing with this 2025K iMac that's an Intel computer, although you hear it's an Intel and not an M1, it still has a lot of the latest technology in it to be able to edit H.265 files. And if you have something like a DJI Mini 3 Pro or any of the more modern cameras that shoot 10-bit video, those are all using H.265, and that's why on the older Intel computers, they were definitely a lot slower editing those files, which the 2025K iMac can handle no problem, especially if you upgrade the RAM. It has a really nice graphics card, so again, not only are my renders on the computer relatively quick, but I can also game on this computer in boot camp, which you can no longer do on the M1 computers. I don't think you're ever going to be able to do that unless for whatever reason Microsoft ends up starting to make M1 computers, or ARM-based computers, which I don't see happening. So to kind of sum everything up, I have this computer because number one, I can use Boot Camp and I can have Windows and Mac on this computer. Number two would be the user upgradable RAM, which is a huge deal still here in 2022, the fact that you can do that. It is less than half the price to buy the RAM on Amazon. And I'll have links to everything in the description below, but it's half the price to buy the RAM on Amazon than it is doing it through Apple themselves. And you can also purchase this computer on Amazon. Like I said, it is the base model iCore 7. I'll pull it up one more time. $2,200. It ended up costing me around $200, I think a little bit under $200 actually, for the RAM. So it ends up being $2,400, to where if you went through Apple to get the same specs, you'd end up paying like closer to $3,000, maybe a little bit over $3,000. The 512 gigabyte hard drive doesn't really bother me because I store everything on my SSDs or external drives. So overall, this computer is still very, very powerful here in 2022. So if you were looking for a new computer and you, for whatever reason, needed to have an Intel computer or an Intel Mac versus going to an M1, M2, getting something like a Mac Studio, which I think the Mac Studio is really the main competitor to this computer right now, especially at the same price that it's at. But if you needed an Intel computer, the 5K 2020 iMac base model i7 version, should always say base model i7, is still a very solid computer here in 2022. It is not leaving my desk anytime soon, as it still does everything I need it to. I've edited small short films. I do all of my YouTube editing on this. I edit all of my client work on this, which a lot of that stuff I can do on my MacBook Air. But this screen is just so massive. The computer does everything I need it to, and it renders much faster than my MacBook Air. So this is why it is my computer of choice. So if you have any questions, you're interested in getting the 5K iMac, you want to see more content about this computer, make sure to ask in the comments below. If you got knowledge and value out of today's video, please make sure to hit that like, subscribe, and notification bell to keep up to date with the latest videos from the channel. Now, I don't do many computer videos on this channel, and I wanted to do today as a live stream so I can kind of pull up the computer as I was talking about it, because B-roll on computers isn't so sexy. So I figured I would actually have the pricing and specs to show you along while I was talking about it. So for those of you who did join, thank you for joining me today. We're not going to do a Q&A in today's video just because it's pretty much over now. I got to start setting up for my new video, which is on this 15mm lens I'm actually using right now with the Sony FX30. So stay tuned. I'm doing a review on that lens. It's one of my favorite lenses I've had, and I'm actually really surprised how much I like it. I did plan on using the R7 for today's stream, as Canon just actually came out with the ability to live stream with the R7 over USB-C. But that got canceled due to some issues that are not going to be fixed on Canon's end, which I'll discuss in a later video. So again, stay tuned for that. Until again, all of you who joined me live, thank you for joining me live. And until next time, I will see you in the next video.